Kind of a few minutes. It's so good to see so many of you on this cold Friday morning, and maybe next April, first Friday will be warmer, I'm hoping. I'm Margaret Copey. I'm the convener of the League of Women Voters of Lexington, and today's program is on affordable housing, and we have two speakers with us today. We have Elaine Tun and Mark Sandine. Before we get started, the usual boilerplate about the League. We are a nonpartisan organization. We never support candidates or parties, but we do support programs, policies, and ballot questions, for example, that we have stands on. So just so you know, that sometimes people get confused about what we do and don't do. So with that, I think we will start.
Unless it means there's a map of Lexington.
That's just a province.
That's good to see that.
What does MAP stand for?
Wealthiest towns in the Commonwealth. Yet even among existing Lexington residents, there is substantial need for affordable housing. 21% of all Lexington households make below 80% of the median income, which is considered by HUD to be low income. For a household of two in 2020, under 80% area median income was $77,000. Of the low-income owners and low-income renters in Lexington, the shocking percentage pay more than 30% of their income for housing, which is considered cost burden. These households may find it challenging to pay for other basic necessities such as food, medical care, or transportation. People often look at a community's subsidized housing inventory as an indication of acceptable number of affordable homes and determining compliance with Chapter 40B, Massachusetts Comprehensive Permit Law. Between 2020 and 2023, Lexington's subsidized housing inventory, or SHI number, has been trending down. The SHI number, however, includes market rate units that are part of a development that contains over 20 to 25% affordable units. In actuality, only 684 out of 12,252 households, or 5.5% of the total housing stock in Lexington, are truly affordable to these lower-income households. Furthermore, in the 12 years between 2011 to June 2023, Lexington had a net gain of 0 affordable housing units. The gap between the cost of purchasing a home and what households can afford is only getting bigger. Rents and mortgages are increasing at rates that outpace growth in income and earnings. In 2017, a median income household could only afford a home that was a little more than one-half of the actual cost of a median home in Lexington, and would have required a 65% higher income to afford that home. In 2022, that number jumps even more dramatically. A median income household could only afford a home that was about 41% of the actual cost of a median home in Lexington. It would have required 153% higher income to afford that home, a jump of 135% over that income which was needed just 5 years early. People who need housing that is affordable already live and work in Lexington. They may include your children, young families just starting out, a town employee, teachers, your server at a restaurant in town, and people working at local businesses. The rent increase, divorce, loss of a spouse, job loss, or other adverse circumstance may also cause someone to need housing that is affordable. With current market prices, many can't afford to remain or come to Lexington. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, 21% of Lexington's population is considered low income, yet only 5.5% of the housing stock are considered truly affordable to those lower income households. When people have affordable homes, they can reside near where they work. Local businesses have customers and local employees. Schools have teachers who live in town, and our community is stronger and more vibrant. Unfortunately, the need for affordable housing is much greater than what is available. The wait lists are incredibly long. This chart does not show the actual wait list for all affordable housing units because some units are managed by other entities. LexHab has an average wait time of 5 years. Lexington Housing Authority has an average wait time of 8 years. There are currently over 900 households waiting an average of 8 years to be housed, which is why we need to accelerate the development of housing. The Affordable Housing Trust mission, as previously voted on overwhelmingly by town meeting, is to create and preserve affordable housing. The Affordable Housing Trust is a financing entity, not a developer, which allows Lexington to segregate funds into a trust fund and use these funds as opportunities or needs arise for local initiatives to create and preserve affordable housing. Having available funds gives Lexington a chance to compete in the private real estate market. Trust funding demonstrates local commitment and helps leverage state, federal, and private sources. These two milestones are what the Affordable Housing Trust has been able to accomplish in its short existence. Lex had contacted the Affordable Housing Trust on a Sunday afternoon, and the Trust was able to meet and vote on authorizing funding for LexHab purchase on Monday morning. There was little time before offers were due, and this enabled LexHab to make a competitive and successful offer on a two-family property. In addition, the Affordable Housing Trust identified parcel 6844, located at the intersection of Lowell Street and North Street, as a possible candidate for an affordable housing development. With the unanimous support of the Select Board, the Affordable Housing Trust performed due diligence at the site, including a wetlands delineation, an engineering survey, tests for groundwater and soil conditions, a Phase 1 21E evaluation, and a title search. Without the pre-funding from last year's CPA funds that was authorized by town meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust would not have been able to fund the purchase of 2 additional affordable housing units or responsibly investigate the feasibility of the Lowell Street and North Street site. This is also why ongoing funding of the Affordable Housing Trust, as may be recommended by the Community Preservation Committee and authorized by town meeting each year, is critical. So what is Article 33? Parcel 6844 is approximately 3.1 acres of land, which was a gift from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to the town of Lexington, which the town accepted in 1978, 46 years ago, for the purpose of open space, recreation, or housing. After analyzing a list of 299 town-owned sites, the Affordable Housing Trust was left with only one town-owned property that is underutilized, currently available, and feasible for a development of all affordable, family-oriented rental housing in Lexington. Article 33 is asking town meeting to authorize the Select Board to explore the use of parcel 6844 for a potential all-affordable housing development and ultimately dispose of it for the purpose of affordable housing. We are often asked about the process. Following town meeting authorization, a request for proposals is prepared and issued by the Select Board or its designee. An appraisal of the parcel is obtained. All proposals will be required to include conceptual design plans, initial proposed financing structure, rental management expectations, details of the implementation plan and timeline, and other supporting documents. Similar to the process previously used by the town to evaluate RFPs, the town will review any proposals received, evaluating the affordability levels, number of apartments, site plan, building design, parking, and other criteria. If a proposal meets town goals and is approved by the Select Board will enter into a land disposition agreement or long-term lease with a successful proponent with terms and conditions to ensure that town goals are met and town interests are protected. The proponent will then work cooperatively with the town in what we recommend is commonly known as a friendly 40B process, and be required to secure permits, zoning board of appeals approval, federal and state approval, complete site plan reviews, proceed with a comprehensive permit process, and secure financing before commencing construction. Lexington's direct contribution to the cost of the affordable housing development is the potential disposition or lease of the land and funding by the Affordable Housing Trust. The major bulk of the financing will be from state, federal, and private sources, which the affordable housing developer will obtain. Community information and listening sessions have already begun, even though the actual development process is many months away. Upon determination that parcel 6844 was developable and all responsible due diligence had been conducted, the Affordable Housing Trust reached out first to the neighbors of the parcel to invite them to an informational session. In the ensuing 2 months, the Affordable Housing Trust then met with the Recreation Committee, the Capital Expenditure Committee, the Planning Board, the Appropriation Committee, the Sustainability Committee, the Commission on Disability, the Conservation Commission, LexHab, the Lexington Housing Authority, and the Lexington Housing Partnership Board. The Trust also reached out to the Council on Aging, the Human Rights Committee, the Greenways Corridor Committee, the School Committee, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and the Tree Committee. The Affordable Housing Trust has also had conversations. Not done yet. The Affordable Housing Trust has also had conversations with a wide variety of community groups, such as the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington, the Brazilian Americans of Lexington, the Chinese American Association of Lexington, the Indian Americans of Lexington, Lexington Pride Coalition, and will continue reaching out to other community groups. The Affordable Housing Trust has also held 3 informational sessions with parcel 6844 neighbors, 2 sessions of which were also held with precincts 5 and 6 town meeting members, even though the parcel is solely located in precinct 6. Going forward, this is where the majority of multiple opportunities for Lexington residents and neighbors of the parcel to have input will occur. Many of the concerns gathered so far will be considered when putting together the RFP. If the Select Board ultimately selects a proposal, opportunities for community comment will be afforded during Select Board's meeting on parcel 6844, as well as during Zoning Board of Appeals hearings for the comprehensive permit. The Zoning Board of Appeals is also required to seek comment from relevant boards and committees upon receipt of the comprehensive permit application, which provides additional public comment opportunities. Abutters are notified in advance of the opening of the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearings. The public's comments and issues throughout the hearing process will be explored by the Zoning Board of Appeals and the developer. The community raised these concerns during our outreach. With respect to traffic, the affordable housing developer will be required by the town to conduct a traffic study at the affordable housing developer's expense during the process to identify traffic impacts and any recommendations to address them. Additionally, issues such as sidewalks will be addressed during the comprehensive permit process. It is also possible that the sidewalks and walking routes will be addressed by the town separately, since the importance of additional sidewalks in this neighborhood has been acknowledged in the town bicycle and pedestrian plan. With respect to public transportation, existing express service already goes by the parcel once an hour to Market Basket, the Burlington Mall, Leahy Burlington, the Whiteman's area, and connecting MBTA service, as well as to Lexington Center and connecting MBTA service in the other direction. Lexington has applied for a grant through the New Regional Transit Innovation Grant, which, if awarded, would create a bus route from Waltham to Burlington, which would increase service to every 30 minutes. The wetlands on the site were delineated by a professional wetland scientist. Approximately 25% of the site is located within a wetlands buffer zone. The due diligence undertaken by the Affordable Housing Trust indicates that the site can support a feasible scale of development for all affordable rental housing while leaving the wetlands resource undisturbed. Any development on the site will be subject to the Town of Lexington's Stormwater Bylaw, the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Lexington Local Wetlands Bylaw. In addition, the request for proposals will outline the goals of the town for development of the parcel for affordable housing that is A, respectful and well integrated into the surrounding community and environment, B, is of high quality design and construction, and C, maximizes the protection of resource areas and natural features. The Affordable Housing Trust attended a development review team meeting with members of the planning department, the fire department, the police department, the building department, the health department, the town engineering department, the sustainability and resilient officer, the zoning department, the land use department, and the economic development department. Based on the information obtained, the land was determined to be developable. When asked about the infrastructure, the town engineering staff did not identify any water or sewer concerns in this area. Finally, With respect to school enrollment, the number of proposed apartments, the proposed apartment sizes won't be known until the proposals are received and one is chosen. It is not possible to project the number of students until that time. It is also illegal under the Fair Housing Act of 1968, as well as under the Massachusetts Fair Housing Law, to discriminate against families with children. We do know, however, that based on a 2023 letter by the School Enrollment Working Group, we can expect a gradual increase in enrollment from students in the new units. After several years, this increase would level off at a ratio of less than 1 student per household, and the additional students would be distributed across a range of grades. The benefits of affordable housing are consequential. We are all negatively impacted when quality affordable housing is in short supply. Housing intersects with almost every other social issue in our country, from education and health to employment and safety. In recent years, tight standards for mortgage loans, high interest rates, and high home prices have made it impossible for many people to buy homes, causing more people to become renters. Large numbers of renters and a scarce supply of rental housing creates pressure on the housing market and keeps costs high, resulting in prices that are out of reach for many households. Homes with rents that are affordable would enable residents to pay less for housing, go beyond basic necessities, and buy healthy food, have better access to health care, and spend more at their local businesses. Homes that are affordable will enable residents who might otherwise be forced out to remain in town. Homes with rents that are affordable will help create greater diversity of housing to meet the needs of people across the socioeconomic spectrum. Homes with rents that are affordable will allow people who work in Lexington, such as our teachers, our firefighters, our restaurant workers, our people who work in local businesses, to live in the community where they work. Homes with rents that are affordable will bring new energy and vitality from young families and people with a greater diversity of background. Homes with rents that are affordable will help house the Commonwealth's 7,500 families who are either homeless or at risk of being homeless. In turn, this creates opportunities for investing in Lexington's future through the creation of jobs, improved economic mobility, and revenue to the town. Lexington has committed to having a diverse and inclusive community, and an adequate supply of affordable housing promotes this while also addressing inequities. The housing crisis throughout Massachusetts, in our region, and in Lexington has taken decades to get to this point. Many of the issues have been self-imposed through restrictive zoning bylaws made on the local level, above average construction costs. Massachusetts is 20% above the national average. Lengthy and expensive permitting processes. Massachusetts grants permits for new housing at 1/2 the national level, and some of the largest minimum lot sizes in the country. Many pieces have been put in place for Lexington to finally stop talking about affordable housing and to actually start meaningfully building affordable housing. The need for a housing that is affordable cannot be overstated. The Affordable Housing Trust was formed to create affordable housing. This is what we are working on. Parcel 6844 offers Lexington an opportunity to do something the town has long hoped for but struggled to achieve at scale, creating more affordable housing in our community. It has not been used or designated to be used since its gift to Lexington 46 years ago. This site is a unique property since it is town-owned land, and the town has the potential to work cooperatively with an affordable housing developer who will create all affordable rental apartments and who will provide the bulk of the financing needed. We're unlikely to see another parcel like this in the near future, or possibly a decade, or even more. The place where we live shapes our lives and our health. Communities that are diverse and inclusive are more likely to form bonds and create a sense of belonging for all residents. A community is bigger than just one person, and we should ask ourselves, can we lift up our community? Lexington is proud of its history. Let's work together so that Lexington can be proud of its future. Thank you.
how many rental units are planned?
As we said, we don't have a plan. The way this works is, if you put out an RFP, the proponents would come back with a proposal, and that proposal would indicate how many units they're planning to build. So what we do know is that there are some lower limits in terms of what is able to be accomplished in terms of achieving the subsidies from the low income, the federal government and the state government. And one of the developers that we heard said that they would expect the sweet spot to be between 30 and 50 units.
One is construction.
When is construction? I don't know how to answer that. What we can say is that when we talk to people who are doing similar kinds of processes, that there's usually a 2 or 3 or 4 year approval process, and then there's probably about a year or two of construction after that. So even if we start today, we probably wouldn't see anything for 4 or 5 years before people are able to move in.
So you've listed quite a few different people who live in Lexington who are challenged by housing, and I'm assuming some of those people have already gotten onto a list. Are you going to ensure that these rental units will be available to people who are already in town or working in town and are searching for housing?
I'm not an expert on how these lists operate. So others in the room are experts in how these operate. So Bob, do you have an answer?
The state agency for affordable units to be on the SHI, there are state standards that have to be followed, and the state standards do not allow 100% priority for people in the town where the housing is built. If you can see often in the Globe advertisements for affordable units in other communities where people from Lexington could also apply to live in those units.
So the simple answer is the Affordable Housing Trust does not manage the waiting list. The state and other agencies manage the waiting list. So that would continue.
When you showed statistics about the number of low-income residents in Lexington, does that include their assets, like their Roth and 401k plans, for example? Because we're definitely low income, but I don't feel stress,
Right.
Because we have assets that cover this.
I would have to look into that to get an answer.
So that's sort of
It's based on HUD income.
HUD income levels.
so basically, it's an example of how to mislead with statistics to make it look like there's a larger number of people that need this when actually, not even counting the value of our house, many of us don't need low income, even though we could qualify for it.
Okay. All right. That's a good point.
If you apply for fuel assistance, they count, and other income-based assistance programs, they do take into account, after a certain age, a fraction of your IRA assets.
The thing, I think the point that we're sort of feeling in our hearts is that lots of people think of Lexington as a wealthy community where there isn't any need for affordable housing, and even among the residents of Lexington, we're seeing a need for affordable housing that's greater than the supply.
What's an affordable rent near $2,000?
So affordable rent, the way they define housing burdened is that if somebody is paying more than 30% of their income for housing. So that's the intent, is that
So would be based on the incomes of the individual and then 30%.
right, that's how these things work. Is you're trying to assure that people are what they call housing burdened. Margaret.
Yeah, let's say this passes and you get a bidder and you build, who's going to administer this property? Who would it be under? Right now we have LexHab, we have what's the other one? The Housing Authority. And now we have the trust, the housing trust. Who would be the administrator for this particular property? Do you have an idea?
Trust would not be the administrator of the property. The housing trust is the financing entity. So that's not what we would be doing. Is the town would be issuing an RFP, getting an RFP from an organization that's going to build the property and manage the property, and so that would be how it would work. So,
Okay, there is at Lexington Hills, Avalon has 25% affordable units. When you look at their affordable prices, there's a lower, you have to have more than $50,000 a year to qualify for moving in. And you have a maximum, that's the 80% of the area median income. I assume the properties on Bedford Street that were just built said they were going to have a rent of $2,000, which is the 80% for one bedroom. It's about $2,000 for, I'm assuming that there would be this lower, you have to have more than this minimum amount. Probably because of Section 8 providing you with vouchers which have a limit. This is incredibly complex. I don't know how anyone manages their way through it, but it's...
So it is complex, and many people don't know what SHI mean and what AMI mean. So,
but what's the $50,000 lower? You have to have more than $50,000 is not an apartment, right? Well, it's not a. Well, that's what the rent is at.
So what we're thinking about here is something that's a little bit different than these other places.
In Avalon, which is a private.
Thinking about, yes. So many people who are thinking about affordable housing use different levels of what they would consider to be affordable housing. There's AMI. Use the term AMI. There's area median income. And there's a definition that is typically used for affordable, which is 80% of area median income. Now, what we're looking for here in the affordable, in this particular entity, what we're looking for in order to secure the low-income housing tax credits from the federal and state government, which would cover about half of the cost of building these homes, is an average of 60% area median income for the mix. And so that's one of the values that the Affordable Housing Trust has, is that we're interested in providing housing for those who are very low income. So there's low income, which is 80%, there's very low income, and then there's very, very low income, which is considered 30% AMI. And so what we would expect is that there would be a mix of those levels in this location.
Yeah, and just to give you some ideas, so the average median income at Lexington is part of regional. It's a little bit over $100,000 a year. So for the 30% one person income, that would be $31,550. For two people, it'd be $35,600. For three persons, it'd be $40,050. Four persons, $44,500. So quite low.
Except Avalon at Lexington Hills says you need $50,000 a year to move in. That's
all right. So if we could, are there other folks who have questions? I want to make sure we get to everybody.
Okay. Can the town give preference to nonprofit developers?
Town can give preference for anything. This is one of the things that we can do as a town. We can make a decision as a select board to put evaluation criteria in place that would say we would prefer a proposal that has this outcome versus that outcome, and so we can weight the proposals based on the types of outcomes we want to see as a select board. And Jill,
Make that.
Just to add a little bit of clarity on that, when we draft the RFP, it includes literal rankings for the proposals when we then go to make a choice. and you will get additional points for meeting any of the things that we say, which can be nonprofit development. It can be the breakdown of 30% AMI, 60% AMI, whether it's, the breakdown of the size of units, the amount of open space that's retained, different criteria that are important to us, we will give additional points to. And each application that comes in will be ranked against, first of all, meeting the criteria at all, and then by exceeding the minimum levels for each of those. And that's standard procedure for reviewing RFPs.
Thank you, Jill. Exactly. And one other thing that I should say about this is if we get a number of proposals that do not meet those criteria, we are not required to accept any of the proposals if, in fact, we get something that we deem is not adequate for this particular parcel. So there is no risk to putting a proposal out. All we're going to get is good information about what is possible, and if that possibility looks and meets the criteria that the select board has set, then we can go forward. But if not, we're completely within our bounds to say, no, we're going to stop and go for another round later. Any other questions? We have a legal question.
It's our legal question.
Okay, Norman.
As a town meeting member now from Precinct 3, which is far away from where this land is, I have received a number of letters, I think they think I'm still where I used to live, saying, we're against this. This is, many of them are neighbors from OP Circle, is it, and those streets. But all of them talk about, and you mentioned this, but all of them talk about 50 units. And the other day, I was at an event where somebody who does not live there, anywhere near there, came up to me and said, I can't imagine that Lexington is going to have 50 units. And is that going to be a high-rise building? But we're finding out today, well, I knew that you're going to get our, proposals. But where do this 50 units come from? It seems like, how do we answer that?
So that's really, in our first meeting with the neighbors, the question was raised, what do you believe is the maximum number of units that could be built on this property? And the Affordable Housing Trust, one of the members of the Affordable Housing Trust is an architect, and we had asked him that idea, what is actually possible, and he showed us a sketch that he thought was the maximum that could be built on this particular property, and that would be about 48 units in 3 stories. Not sure where this 5-story idea, high rises, came from. It's nothing that has been discussed at the Affordable Housing Trust, and certainly unlikely to be acceptable to a select board. So that's all that's going on, is trying to be full disclosure, is to say, what do we think is the most that could possibly come in? On the other side of things, as we've said, we've also talked with nonprofit housing folks and for-profit housing folks, and asked them, where does this sweet spot occur in terms of being able to do the fiscally, fiduciarily responsible thing for the town, of being able to put in $1 instead of $10 for every unit of housing? And they're saying that their sweet spot is somewhere between 30 and 50 units. So we don't know what we're going to see. And so I can understand that neighbors might be raising some concerns by us disclosing that number. And some folks might have said we shouldn't have disclosed that number, but I think we need to be honest with everybody and say this is what we think is possible. But I think, from the question we often get is, what happens if we do less than that? What happens if we, at a recent neighborhood meeting, there was a question, what happens if we just did 20 units? Well, then we get back into something that's more like this mixed development kind of thing, where you tend to see a 10% of the units being affordable. So if we put 20 units in, we'd have 18 market units, and 2 affordable units. And so from my perspective, do we want to use town-owned property to provide two homes when we could be doing much better? And so that's really sort of the trade-off we're forced to think about. So thank you, Norman. That's a great question. Any other? Jill, you have a question.
No, I'm just going to add 2 more sentences to your comment, which I think is important also. A lot of the funding sources that are used for affordable housing development are only available for 100% affordable housing also. The model that you're saying, in addition to not meeting our goals, is also not going to have the same funding sources, which are what make affordable housing viable for the developer.
Thank you for that clarification. It seems like we're running out of questions here, so Glenn.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but this is a more technical question.
It's shocking. Glenn is asking a technical question.
So I'm curious, in terms of the types of funding that you have available, subsidies, grants, and home loan, all those things that make these types of all affordable developments possible, what is really going to be the town's contribution per unit versus the actual cost per unit? Because it's not going to be 10 to 1. You're pretty sure about that.
Sure.
So what is the real multiplier going to be on the town's investment?
The town's housing feasibility study said that they're estimating that you would be seeing somewhere along the lines of $550,000, some maybe $570,000. I can't remember the exact number right now off the top of my head, cost to build a unit. And that after you take in the federal and state subsidies and the other parts of the development stack, that, the financing stack, there's 6 or 8 or 10 different sources of funding, they would expect the town would need to be providing somewhere on the order of $100,000 to $110,000. So that would be about 20% of the overall cost of this particular development. But the thing So Glenn is absolutely correct. If we're looking forward and we're seeing what's the cost per unit and how much would we be putting in per unit, it might be something on the order of 20%. When I think about this number of 1 and 10, I tend to think about what we have been doing in the past, which is spending $750,000, $800,000, $900,000 to buy one property and move one person into that property. So what we have been doing in the past is more like spending $1 million a unit, and I'm looking to figure out how we can be much more fiscally responsible.
Mark, if I can add. So I do want to caution that the numbers in the feasibility study were for those sites, not for parcel 6844. When we spoke to the affordable housing developers, and they talked about developments that they were currently doing throughout Massachusetts and McCabe, they quoted looking for contributions from the Affordable Housing Trust, much lower numbers. They were saying something like 1 million or 2 million or 3 million from the Affordable Housing Trust. So until we get those proposals back, we don't know what those numbers are going to be. So obviously we would hope for the lower number.
Exactly. And so this is the thing is, our consultant said we might need to spend 20%. The nonprofit developers were saying something more like 5 or 6 or 7%. So we don't know where it's going to come out. And as we all know, anybody who's been in town meeting recently, the numbers seem to come out higher than projected. So we have to wait until we actually get a proposal.
And it will also depend on the interest rates and the situation at the time these developers are applying for financing. So it will be based on the available subsidies at that time, as well as the interest rate environment, which we do not know what that's going to be in the future.
Okay. Oh, more questions.
I have another question. I really feel that people, low-income, medium-income people ought to have a crack at home ownership. And I was reading the feasibility study that was done, published this summer, and they give 3 scenarios. And the lowest one, 25% owner condominiums, is a possibility. Any higher ratio is impossible to do financially for a developer. So I was just wondering why have you concentrated on just rentals?
So that's a really good question, and I think many of us have benefit by home ownership, and that's something I would personally like to see if we can find a way to enable sort of low-income people to move into home ownership. The reality of the situation that we're in right now is that it appears that there's very little subsidies from the federal or the state government to enable this, right? So the economics of providing home ownership are substantially less advantageous than the economics that are currently available to us for providing rental. So yes, I'd love to figure out how we can do home ownership. In the environment we're in, it's much, much easier to do rental.
Mm. Well, I was interested in the Boston proposal for Section 8 home ownership, and I think I sent out an email to the team and a list about that. And it just seems something like we ought to think about is maybe not proceeding with this particular one, but in the future.
I am so in agreement with you. Yes, I would like to figure out how we could do that. Out in the back.
I had a question about who will be the management company or the owner of the units, because who does the rent go to? Does it go back to the town?
As we contemplate right now, we're not expecting that the town would have any ownership interest in this. So we would expect that the proponent that is successful would own and manage the properties.
Yep, there are companies that will manage these for the developer, so that's also an option.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Is there any interest in creation of rental portable units at Muzzy High in the old space?
The Affordable Housing Trust has not been discussing that. That's certainly something that...
Should LECTV already own something?
Right. So there's, what is it, 80 units or something like that?
There's seven rentals.
And a number of them are, I guess it sounds like around 10% are currently owned by LexMedia. So that's already been, what is this, is like 50 years now, that's something like that. But yes, there are affordable units in.
I know, but there's all that old space from the senior stuff that are moving out. Yeah.
Right, and the select board is still trying, and the town staff are still trying to figure out the optimal use for that space.
Basement space.
There are other complexities associated with that need to be addressed before we can move forward. I don't really think it's in the scope of this meeting to talk about that, but there are other issues that need to be addressed before we can start utilizing that space more.
In several years.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I am very encouraged by what's happening. I've been involved too long. I grew up 80 years ago in affordable East Lexington. This is when there were people that were actually poor. I mean, we had no car, blah, blah. We lived next to Cataldo Celery Farm that was on Bow Street, which the whole area was blue collar. And I never realized that meant anything. You went on, enjoyed schooling and so forth. But recently, I mean, those of us who have been here for a while, who bought a house 50 years ago for $30,000, and now we see they're worth, well over $1 million. We've done nothing to change. It's overwhelming to me because I just don't like where the town is going if they don't do something to make it affordable for other people, such as my family, who were able to move here and enjoy the benefits of a beautiful town and contribute, thank you, over the years. So I just want to say thank you to your group. You're doing a lot of good work, and I certainly will support you in town.
Thank you so much. That young people are future of Lexington, and young families of the future of Lexington that add vibrancy and, frankly, joy to our lives. So that's where we are on this. So thank you. All right, Margaret, we'll hand the microphone back over to you.
I would thank everybody for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I loved your presentation. Can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Yes, because I would like to look at it more closely. And Mark, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule as a selectman to come today.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, and Jill, I was going to get to that. And Glenn, your appropriations committee. Who else do we have here? We have some town meeting members. I see. Yeah, no, I got I see a bunch of town meeting members, and I see some of our loyal followers. Bob Pressman comes to almost all of our First Fridays, so thank you all. Our next First Friday will be April 5th in this room, and the subject is going to be gun control.
That's been around forever.
Right. Well, we're having the league specialist, a woman named Jen Muroff, who
I have posters we can.
who specializes in and she's going to update us on the legislation, because there's been some new legislation. I'm trying to get a few other people. One of the things, maybe I'll have to press on the select board to get somebody from the police department. I'd love to get the police chief about what's going on in Lexington. And I was just listening on NPR yesterday about issues about people who own guns, keeping them safe. And that would be an interesting part of that discussion. So stay tuned. It'll be
Right.
April 5th in this room, 9:30, same format. And with that, don't forget to vote if you haven't already voted. I guess early voting stops at 1 o'clock today. You can still drop your mail-in ballots in the blue box, or I guess you could actually go in and leave them at the clerk's office up until Tuesday. What?
Where is early voting? Is that the carry on?
Yes, till 1 o'clock today. You're cutting it close now. Anyway, and then of course in-person voting on Tuesday for both the presidential primary and for the town election. So I hope all of you vote. I'm very interested in increasing voter turnout in this town, not so much in the presidential primary, but in the municipal elections. Yeah, I mean, although this presidential primary is going to be, it's pretty dull, quite frankly. It's not much there. And public service announcement, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, the Lexington Democratic Town Committee is holding its caucus to elect its delegates to the state convention. And we just found out yesterday that Ed Markey is going to stop by at about 2 o'clock to make comments. So if you want to come, want to see him, you can come see him. And I'm glad he's coming by. That's good. Yeah.
We're not part of it.
Just say when the doors close to get in.
Legal.
Well, the doors don't actually close. To register to vote as a voting member, you have to be a registered Democrat, you have to live in Lexington, or pre-registered. So if you're 16, do we have any 16-year-olds here?
We know Madison, every kid that can make it an office.
Yeah, if you're pre-registered or registered as a Democrat and live in Lexington and you're in line by 2:15, that's the cutoff. Some years we've had to put a sign on the back of the last person, but I don't think we're going to have an overwhelming turnout this year. But anybody can come in and watch the proceedings. It's always open to the public. So thank you for asking that. So with that, I would like to wish you all a good day, and thank you for coming.